Uganda's strategic position along the Central African Rift Valley, its favorable climate and altitude of 1,200 meters and above, the reliable rainfall around Lake Victoria forested basin made it attractive to African cultivators and herders as early as the 4th century BC. The migrants were cultivators who gradually cleared the forest and expanded to populate most of Africa south of the Sahara. Their knowledge of agriculture and use of iron technology permitted them to clear the land. They displaced small bands of indigenous hunter-gatherers. By the 4th century BC, the Bantu-speaking metallurgists were perfecting iron smelting to produce medium-grade carbon steel in preheated forced draft furnaces.
Agriculture was very important, but it became very important especially with the invention of iron, because people were able to make more effective tools of steel that enabled them to cut down forests and so on. And I think it's at that stage that you're getting the separation of kingdoms, differentiation between Bunyoro and Uganda, one becoming a pure agricultural kingdom because of the invention of iron, another one having a mixture of agriculture and animal husbandry.
The settlement of present-day Uganda can be traced back to the early 15th century, during which migrations of various groups of Nilotes and Bantus converged into the interior of the Central African Rift Valley and River Nile Basin. The first batch of a variety of Nilotes came from the southern hills of Ethiopia. These were pastoralist Nilo Hamites. One lot spread down from Lake Turkana along slopes of the eastern Rift Valley. Another lot, called the Chwezi, moved into central and western present-day Uganda up the western Rift Valley ranges. These quickly formed themselves into a ruling group over clusters of Bantu cultivators who had settled around Lake Victoria forested basin as early as the 4th century BC.
The founding of Bunyoro Kitara Empire began more than 1,000 years ago, as the founders of the kingdom were people, according to oral history, who originated from somewhere in Abyssinia, that's Ethiopia. The Bachwezi kings took over from the Batembuzi. The most famous was in Dahura. That one, the Bachwezi were very clever people, very intelligent. In fact, the system of counties, today's counties in Uganda, is their creation. They began ruling the empire because the Bachwezi extend the empire to today's northern Tanzania, to today's eastern Congo, Boga Zaire, to northern Uganda, eastern Kenya, and the whole of present Uganda was all Bunyoro Kitara Empire. But of course, it was very extensive. They could not administrate it effectively. And when the Bachwezi, you see, the Bachwezi were ruling the kingdom, the empire, with what they call an iron hand. They were very militant and very strong, disciplined. But because of that character, the people became restless. So there appeared a spirit of rebellion against the Bachwezi. Now the Bachwezi could not stand this. They decided to disappear.
These pastoralist Chwezi established the first type of state in the 15th century, which controlled expanses of land around Lake Victoria. In our series, Uganda, Taking Stock, we are going to trace our history, our destiny, starting from our key players.
My name is Yola Munsamba. I'm Principal Private Secretary to the King of Bunyoro. I've worked for the King of Bunyoro since he was crowned, and I've been here for the last 18 years. I also found myself looking after this regalia after it was brought into the throne room. These drums form a link in the migration story. As I said, this is a very ancient origin from the far east. It proves true, as the royal trumpets do, and as the Iron Road money does, that what you're dealing here is a culture which unites a lot of places around the world, from the Middle East, from the Far East, and from many parts of Africa. Archaeologists recovered many arrows made like this when they worked at the Bigo Byamugenyi and Antusi. That means whoever deposited this arrow in this collection must have been also the maker of Bigo Byamugenyi. Historians have failed to tell us who built Bigo Byamugenyi. I'm telling you who built the Bigo Byamugenyi, who were the kings of Bunyoro. Because how does this arrow happen to be here?
Another lot of Nilotes who came down soon after, Nilotics, came along the White Nile Valley, settled as pastoralists in central northern savanna areas.
Northern Uganda was part of the Bunyoro Empire, and the Bachwezi had established their rule there. So Omuchwezi Chomya had a wife in northern Uganda. That wife was called Nyatworo and was married to Chomya Muchwezi, and she produced him 4 children, boys. And the first one, the elder, was called Rukidi Mpuga Isingoma. The other, he had a twin brother, Kato. Then he had another brother, Nyarwo, and another Nchiza. Now, these boys, of course, they were speaking Luo. Now, those princes, 4 of them, they collected their relatives, their friends, all of Luo in origins. So they came down to Bunyoro Kitara. They went to Mubende, Buhekura. You know, up the hill, Nyakahuma. The Baganda call it Nyakaima. For us, we know it as Nyakahuma. Rukidi Mpuga Isingoma and his brothers and the elders, they all went to that hill. And Rukidi Mpuga Isingoma was crowned king of Bunyoro Kitara Empire. So he's the first Mubito, the twin brother of Isingoma, was sent, dispatched, to go and become the southern counter chief of Muhwahwa. Muhwahwa is today's Uganda. At that time, it was a very, very small county of Bunyoro Kitara. And Kato also sends a message to his brother, Isingoma, to tell him that Nyowe Tinchagaruka Bunyoro Mezirienko Mutoma, that I have become, I'm not coming back to Bunyoro Kitara. I've germinated like a sap tree, Umutoma. You know, when you plant a sap tree, it germinates, others die. But this one germinated. And then it is called Chimera. Nkamezire Nkomutoma. So the name Kato gets a compound name of Kato Chimera. But that's the beginning of the Buganda Babito dynasty, which has continued up to today.
Our kingdoms have always been brotherly. That is why you find that in very ancient times, when Olimi Rutamahanga defeated Nakibingi, he never annexed Buganda. He allowed Buganda to flourish under Murondo. The culture was one kingdom never consumed another. You always allow the other kingdom to survive. So our relationship is always brotherly. We recognize the other cultures and we go along with them and coexist. We have always coexisted. Because as I explained when we started from the same origins. We are all sons of Kintu.
Two different types of states seemed apparent between these two dynasties. In the Chwezi state, the rulers and their pastoral relatives maintained strict separation from their agricultural subjects.
There was one kingdom, the kingdom of Kintu. The Baganda and the Banyoro were a one people. That is why you find cross-intelligibility between Uganda and the Lunyoro is 78%. That means we have been separated for about 2,000 years. Because a language loses 20% of its lexicon in 2,000 years. That means you're making a loss of about 10% every 1,000 years. As you develop apart, you evolve different languages, but from the same language tree. So we all spoke one language originally, and we started developing apart, and that's how you get the kingdom of Bunyoro separating and developing separately, and the kingdom of Buganda developing separately. But originally, they were all one under Kintu.
In the Bito state, no rigid caste lines divided Bito society. The Bito ideology granted every Bito clan member royal status, and with it, the eligibility to rule.
By then, you remember we were called Balasangeye until we came to Buganda, and then now we got that word Buganda. Buganda actually means bando. We have different dialects. We have our 12 clans, call them tribes. Up to the present day, that is the dynasty from Kintu to today. That is a country which had a governance system so well arranged that I wish the entire Uganda can copy it. I've told you we have 56 clans, each one with its own constitution and each one managing its own affairs. But eventually we unite and become one Uganda. Uganda's system of governance is very unique. Even the British used it to improve their system, local government setup. Because we start with an individual, a man and a wife in a home. On the political and administrative side, when you get homes, you unite them and you call them Chitongole. That's why we had Batongole. That is the smallest unit. Then, when you unite the Betongole, you get Omuluka, which you call a parish, with its own court, a council called Chitawulus. And that Chitawulus has got a lot of functions. It performs as a political organ, it performs as a judicial organ, it performs as a social whatever. Then you go to the peak where Katikiro and his chief and whatever. And then we all point to Kavak through Katikiro.
In our second feature, we will look at the consolidation of these new two powerhouses and the communities forming around them. The cultural contact between the Chwezi, the Bito, and the indigenous Bantu emerged three different types of states. The Hima displaced south to Rwanda and Burundi. It preserved a caste system. The rulers and their pastoral relatives maintained a strict separation from the agricultural subjects, the Hutu. The Hima rulers lost their Nilotic language and became Bantu speakers, but preserved an ideology of superiority in political and social life.
The phase of Chwezi tradition believes that the Chwezi phased in three ways. First, the Chwezi as demigods. Then the second phase, the Chwezi as the Chwezi rulers. Then the last, the Chwezi when the Luo come in to bring in the Luo Babito culture. And the Luo Babito are seen to be the last phase. Invaders have come from the north. They cross River Nile in a place called Chope. They enter the great Bunyoro Kitara, which is actually the cradle for Chwezi. The Chwezi found they cannot coexist, and history thinks they just disappeared. Up to today. Where did they go? Some believe they just disappeared in thin air. Others believe the last phase of the Chwezi, when the Batembuzi rulers, the whatever came, they just disappeared because they could not mix with those. But it gives us a lot of research areas for history. But it leaves a cradle, it leaves a big mark in the history of Uganda, because that dynasty will never be forgotten. And once they phased out, and then Bunyoro Kitara, the massive Bunyoro Kitara, also phases out because it was going up to Karagwe. Then we get new kingdoms, Bunyoro Kingdom, Ankole Kingdom, which are the direct replica of Chwezi dynasty. You have to have relation to Chwezi to be associated with, to be respected in Bunyoro, to be respected among the Ankole.
The Bito immigrants displaced the Chwezi to secure power as a royal clan. They established a state in Bunyoro as a dominant political power in the region. No rigid caste lines divided the Bito society. The other side to emerge on the northern shores of Lake Victoria was Buganda. This area of swamp and hillside was not attractive to the rulers of pastoral states. Buganda eventually became a refuge area for those who wished to escape Bunyoro rule. All factions within Bunyoro who were defeated in contests for power. One such group from Bunyoro, headed by Prince Chimera, arrived in Buganda early in the 15th century. In this program of Uganda Taking Stock series, we will look at the consolidation of these new powerhouses.
Bunyoro and Buganda, we have more or less the same source of where we come from, is more or less the same. Nangoma unites us. Buganda has got written history from AD 400. That is when we have that dynasty of kings from Tonda up to Bemba Musota. And then we start another dynasty from Chintu to the present. We have 56 clans, each one with its own constitution, and each one managing its own affairs. But eventually we unite and become one Uganda.
Assimilation of refugee elements strained the ruling abilities of Buganda clan chiefs.
Once a community moves and settles in an area, that process alone makes a history of those people and a history of that country. That is, before migration, Uganda was inhabited by a group of people history calls the Bushmen, the Bushmanoids, Bushmen, if you want it that way, and Pygmanoids, the Pygmies. We still have a bit of the Pygmies in Uganda. The Ituri forests in Congo, parts of western Uganda, we have a bit of the Pygmies, the Batwa. Those are actually a replica of the true people before migration. So, no one of the present generation can claim to be owner of Uganda by origin in history. The 34 million Ugandans today owe their existence into a country called Uganda due to migration. And that makes migration very important in history of Uganda, 50 years of existence.
In Buganda's kingship, all clans participated to consolidate a centralized kingship, and by 1850, Buganda territory was expanded. Newly conquered lands were placed under chiefs nominated by the king. Until 1800, Uganda remained relatively isolated from the outside world, with an internal trade system among the Central African Lake region kingdoms.
Trade started because nobody has got everything. You may have goats, but you don't have cows. We started the trade in Buganda by exchanging things, physically, barter trade. But then we changed it to monetary trade. That is, we had our rupee.
The intrusion from the outside world finally came in form of long-distance trade for ivory. Ivory had been a staple trade item from the East African coast.
Since time immemorial, Bunyoro was a destination for traders because of our natural resources. Traders wanted ivory, traders wanted salt, traders wanted the metallic goods. Traders brought here prestige goods like beads and so on. People of other nationalities, from the Roman world, from the Greek world, from the Indian world, from the Arab world, they all came to trade here. In much later years, you had a lot of Arabs coming here. Of course, to look for ivory, to look for markets for guns and gunpowder, and to capture slaves. That went on throughout the 18th century. Even the so-called explorers came here looking for wealth. They came for our resources. Because if it was just a question of exploring and looking for borders, re-establishing borders and trade routes and so on, why did the explorer always move with a geologist, Lord Murchison? Murchison founded the Royal Geographical Society, and he sponsored the geologists to come to Africa and find out where the minerals, where the precious minerals were. You hear about King Solomon's mines. Where was King Solomon's gold mined? It was mined here. It was mined in Africa.
By 1844, leading large caravans financed by Indian moneylenders, coastal Arab traders based on Zanzibar reached Lake Victoria. The trader Ahmad bin Ibrahim introduced Buganda's Kabaka Mutesa I to the advantages of foreign trade. He imported cloth, guns, and gunpowder. He also introduced Islam. Bunyoro also sought to attract foreign trade in an effort to keep up with Buganda in the arms race, besides the Egyptian-sponsored agents who sought ivory, slaves, and promoted foreign conquest.
Consequences of Arab relations with native leaders to a large extent was extensively destructive. The Arabs from the north had a goal. They are either coming in for slaves, they are coming in for food, they are coming in to raid for women. Those were the early Arabs. The moment they came in, they had to actually associate with the power king, so that they used the power areas, Africans, the chiefs who had been earmarked as important, and they used them to raid. If you go to northern Uganda, they brought confusion among the roadship. One area raids the other. This is the same confusion they brought into northern Bunyoro. Because once they are raiding, they have to get a point of station from where they will what? They raid.
Khedive Ismail of Egypt sent Samuel Baker, a British explorer, to raise the Egyptian flag over Bunyoro. The people of Bunyoro resisted the attempt, and Baker had to fight a desperate battle to secure his retreat.
There was international trade. there was regional trade. You had a long distance trade routes. And it's this ivory which ran us into trouble. The Arabs also wanted it. The Englishmen wanted it. In fact, Samuel Baker, in the 1870s, when Kawaliga was a very young man on the throne, barely 20 years old, Baker came to this country as governor for the Khedive of Egypt. He was governor of Equatoria. But on top of that, he wanted ivory for himself. And although the king was involved in that trade, he had no problem with the Baker also doing business. So Baker started receiving ivory from people. But now a problem came. Baker refused to pay the king's subjects. He wanted to take the ivory free. And that started a quarrel between Sir Samuel Baker and the king. Because Baker was denied the ivory trade. He started hostilities, mistreating the king's subjects. And the country demanded a war. The royal drums were sounded, and Baker was expelled from Bunyoro at the Battle of Masindi, which the Banyoro remember as Ekyabaligota Isansa. That war was over the greed of Baker, who wanted to take free ivory. We were not finished with Baker. Samuel Baker went back to Britain. Baker wrote his history. He wrote his famous book, Ismailia, where he describes Kabalega as a very uncooperative man, as very cruel, as very uncouth.
Buganda realized that the colonials were more powerful weaponry than what the Buganda could do, because Buganda and the Bunyoro were at par. First of all, Buganda and the Bunyoro, we have never been enemies, as people put it, but we were rivals. We were expansionists, making the territories bigger.
Now, when they come, they follow the pattern of where they are received well. Where they are received well, they establish a station. Where they are received wrongly, they portray that area negatively. So that now the shooting starts.
Baker regarded the resistance as an act of betrayal and denounced the Banyoro. Meanwhile, Buganda received trade goods, guns, and foreign visitors, including explorer John Speke, who passed through Buganda in 1862.
Others, they say they have come to explore. One thing is, for us, we knew our areas. I don't know whether that's why we were discovered. It is silly for me to tell me when I had a name for the River Nile, it's Chiira. Victoria is called Narubari. So they didn't. They were discovering themselves. We are trying to discover that the other areas, not we going them. They had already manufactured things. They were ahead of us. But still, there is a negative side. Instead of developing us with our own ideas to improve on, you find a man in Munyolo in Uganda making a hoy and whatnot. If you have a foundry which is better, you would have only assisted him to improve his skills, but they killed our skills.
With the coming of the explorers, the powers of the two established power bases of Buganda and Bunyoro were under threat.
All this shows us that 50 years of Uganda, we should blend a very good history where we are all interrelated. The east aspect of 50th Uganda, the aspect of 50th Uganda, past, present, and future, is that we must live and know we are all related. We are all related through migration. If you follow migration of people, you'll find that there's a way of how we are all interconnected. So, as a historian, my take on it should be that history of migration should be used to make Uganda the best place to live in. We may have differences, but we must have peace. Our differences notwithstanding, we must know we are the same.
The coming into contact with the Arab world for trade opened up the once closed societies to the foreign world, including Uganda. This was followed by Islamic and Christian influences in a struggle to win converts that resulted into conflict and eventually religious wars. In 1884, Buganda's Kabaka Mutesa I died, and the young Kabaka Mwanga took over the throne. The foreign ideology seemed to threaten the state. When Kabaka Mwanga attempted to halt it, the armed converts deposed him in 1888, went into hiding and escaped to Bunyoro. Bunyoro was not part of the religious wars affecting Buganda. It was united by its king Chua II Kabalega, who had several regiments armed with guns.
Kabalega faced it because of the ivory. Our kingdoms have always been brotherly. That is why you find that in very ancient times, when Olimi Rutamahanga defeated Nakibingi, he never annexed Buganda. He allowed Buganda to flourish under Murondo. The culture was one kingdom never consumed another. You always allowed the other kingdom to survive. So our relationship is always brotherly. We recognize the other cultures and we go on along with them and coexist. We have always coexisted.
When they came to Buganda, they were telling us we are friends. When they go to Bunyolo, they tell you Buganda are enemies. And that's why you develop areas where you tell us Bunyolo and Buganda were enemies, but we have never been enemies. We were rivals. And the issue by that time, the understanding was expansionism. But who fought there? Some were Buganda, others were not. But does it mean Buganda was attacking Bunyolo? And after Bunyolo and Buganda, we have more or less the same source of where we come from, is more or less the same. They have never been enemies. And that's why you see, when they get a common enemy, they join hands. Kabalega and Mwanga, they join the hands. But now, Buganda realized the people are more stronger than they are. That's why Mutesa told them, instead of conquering me with a gun, why don't we sit and negotiate the way you are going to be with me? And that's how the protectorate came. Now, Bunyolo thought he would fight it. That was just a difference of opinion.
After Captain Lugard had secured Buganda, he moved to annex Bunyoro and the rest of the areas. Gerard Poto and later MacDonald and Colonel Colville replaced him. These were determined to restore British prestige and root the influence of men like Kabalega. In December 1893, Colonel Colville invaded Bunyoro in a full-scale war against Omukama Kabalega. Kabalega engaged colonial troops in guerrilla warfare. Mwanga joined the fight against British colonialism. The battles pushed them to Lango region, and in March 1899, Lieutenant Colonel Everts moved into Lango to break the resistance. On 9th April 1899, the two leaders were discovered at Oyom near Kangai in Dokolo sub-county.
In April, 29th April 1899, Chwatu Kabalega, the sovereign king of Bunyoro, was captured on the battlefield after suffering an injury. He forcefully laid his arms down, and we lost our sovereignty. We became an unoccupied country. Of course, the British made an agreement with Buganda in 1900, but they never made the agreement with Buganda, because even the king of Buganda himself, Mwanga, was a captive.
This is Kangai Trading Center, 18 kilometers south of Dokolo Town Council in Dokolo District. In this terrain seemed to have been the last engagement between Kabalega and Mwanga forces against the colonial forces led by Lieutenant Colonel Everts. At Aguta village in Kangai sub-county, UBC met David Otieka, the parish chief and caretaker of the sites.
It is true these people were captured here. Historically, it is known that they came here in 1899. As they tried to run away from the colonial rule, because they were resisting. They were being tracked. So as they came, they tried the other side of Masindi. People were following them. Then they crossed Lake Kwania and came to a place in this same sub-county called Adengnino. They tried to settle there. They had a tower there, a watchtower, which they could, their soldiers could climb, watch whoever was crossing the lake to follow them.
About 200 meters to the east along the Kangai-Kaberamaido road are the two separate sites where Kabaka Mwanga and Omukama Kabalega were captured. The sites are two pyramidal monuments erected in the gardens on opposite sides of the road in Aguta village.
This place is one of the places where these Kabakas were said to be arrested. This was where Kabarega had settled. Mwanga is on the other side because they were staying some meters apart. This site is for the Kabaka Mwanga. Together, they came in that same year, they were moving together, but the monument itself was put in 1974 during Amin's time. As I said, Amin had a lot of interest in these historical sites. So this stone was put there. There was a writing here, Mwanga Historical Memorial Site, Kangai Sub-County. It was wooden, so it got rotten. It was dropped.
The natives of Agubi village here in Kangai have one memory left at the site where Kabaka Mwanga was captured, this tree. It is the only species standing in Lango sub-region, perhaps and Acholi sub-region.
This tree you see, we don't have even a name. We call it Mwanga tree because it is said to have been planted by them. You can imagine the length of time now. Since 1899 up to date, it keeps germinating like that. If you see this one standing now, when this one decided to grow old, this one protruded. And now this one also came in to replace this one. So as these ones will die now, another one will come. They keep doing like that. So the tree doesn't die. The Mwanga tree. My appeal to the Baganda and the Banyoro who have an attachment to this historical site is that I feel they should put a hand to help us make this place a place that will not be forgotten forever, such that even our grandchildren would get it and they know whatever historical event took place here. Because the two Kabakas were important.
But this is not all about this site. The residents have utilized this tree in several ways to substitute sisal and ropes to tie their products.
The leaves, as they fall like this, they don't become useless. They are very good fibers. You can use it for building, drying sim, any other tying you want to do, local tying. It is a very good fiber, very hard.
Residents pass by these sites daily.
This place is called Kamalega. And we are told that Kamalega was captured here. For the commemoration of this place, we want the government to put for us a hotel here and a lodge.
Edran Eyom, who is 76 years old now, remembers vividly that Sir Tito Wing, son to Chua II Kabalega, also came to this site. This is the place where Kabalega was captured. Sir Tito Wing, his son, came here with Engur, Adoko Nekion with Oliech.
Na Oliech. Kitu hii mimi najua makati ambayo mtoto ya Kamlenga.
They came here in 1958. As they came, we first visited Mwanga capture site on the other side. When we came here, he gave me 60 shillings to clear this place of the bush, which was forested. I cut down all the trees and dug the road.
This is a site where Kabaka Mwanga was captured by the British during the War of Resistance against colonialists. It is in Agubi village, Kangai sub-county in Dokolo district. At this very site, Kabaka Mwanga was captured. About 300 meters away, Kabaka Kabalega was also captured, and these sites have been preserved by the local people. But unfortunately, they still lay in bush and appeal that they be developed so that they can become historical sites for the children of generations to come.
Just along this road is a ditch, which according to residents was a store for supplies. There are similar ditches elsewhere within this area.
It believed to be one of the holes they had dug. They would use it for keeping some of their things, yes, some weapons. Other holes within the area, but it has got filled up with the soil with the time.
Such historical sites are important to the country's young generation.
Construct some shade, very nice one, grass thatch. But then the South Desk officer said it would not work well. But we are planning. Under NOSAF, we would think we should use some fund to construct something here.
The British later conquered Acholi and the northern region. Ankole Kingdom and Busoga Chiefdoms signed treaties. The kinship-based peoples of eastern and northern Uganda were overcome by military force. The capture of Buganda's Kabaka Mwanga and Omukama Kabalega of Bunyoro Kingdom ended the interlacustrine traditional states and introduced the British rule, which came to an end in 1962 with a new political entity called Uganda.
So independence or no independence, the Bunyoro still remain disempowered. And nothing has ever been done to address those historical injustices. We still continue to live with them. Don't you wonder that even where this palace is standing, the king has no land title?
Once we became independent, we acquired the capacity to shape the destiny of Uganda. This was very important. The British used to determine the destiny of the country, but now we acquired the capacity to determine the destiny of Uganda, to allocate our resources according to our own priorities, to determine the countries we are to relate to, countries which we are going to enrich our resources. So these were very important gains. For example, oil. We discovered that there's plenty of oil in this country.
50 years of Uganda history is so interesting. If this is Uganda independent for 50 years, what was Uganda before 50 years? How can the history of Uganda before 50 years help us who live in the 50 years now, the Uganda of 50 years, to behave? How can we actually integrate that history? And how can that history help us to stay peacefully? I think that should be the mission. We may have differences. We may have differences in height, differences in skin color, differences in language we speak, but our history should teach us that we belong to one unity called Uganda.